I'm Matt.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Not Quite Religious, a podcast where a Christian pastor and former evangelical turned atheist have conversations about faith, religion, philosophy, and life while drinking coffee.
Welcome to episode 39, where we're going to talk about aesthetics, which we kind of got into having lunch after our previous episode.
Yeah, we don't have coffee, but I had a turkey breast, and I hope I don't crash during this.
Well, the food's going to help, right?
Well, I don't know, because you get this protein rush, and then it's that thing.
Yeah, I mean, tryptophan isn't actually a thing.
No, I didn't.
So
I don't. I've heard that that's a myth,
but
still, I get tired after I eat.
Huh? Because you don't have a choice in that, do you?
No, I do not.
I think the reason for that, and I'm sure there could be some scientists who would completely disagree, but sleeping after you eat is the best way to conserve those calories, right? So the way they make sumo wrestlers in Japan is they take guys who are relatively good at sumo, and then they will for weeks feed them rice and make them take a nap, and feed them rice and make them take a nap.
Yeah.
Because it's the best way to gain weight, which is also why
I shouldn't eat cereal at 11 p.m.
Yeah, dietitians would say don't eat after 7 p.m.
Yeah.
If you're trying
to
lose weight.
I think that's really why breakfast is an important meal. It's not because there's anything inherent in breakfast, but if you eat breakfast and lunch and dinner so that you're not hungry after 7, you're not only are you not eating after 7, but you're also you're spending your daylight hours burning off the calories instead of sleeping on them. I don't know how we got on.
I don't know.
It's not our podcast.
Although it's, while you were talking, I'm like, although it's ironic because there's so many different, you should have 6 meals a day. You should just be a bird and eat whenever you're hungry. You should, Whole30 is definitely 3 meals a day and that's it.
It doesn't seem like there's one thing. It seems like everybody's body has some
predetermined
yes, some way that's going to work better for them that isn't going to work for someone else.
Yeah. I think it also turns out that any sort of caloric restriction, just you lose weight, and if you eat more calories than you need a day, you gain weight. It's
right.
It's simple maths.
Yeah. Wait, is that a reference to something we were talking about before?
Yeah. The joke is we were talking about British accents and how they don't call it math.
Yeah, I didn't think we were recording when we were talking about that.
We weren't. So we can have private jokes that the audience isn't in on.
Oh yeah, but that one was too funny though. I don't want to laugh too hard. It's you could do it with the secret jokes, with the Easter eggs.
You just sort of giggle,
but you guffawed, so I felt like we had to explain where that guffaw came from.
Yeah. All right, aesthetics.
So aesthetics. So we were talking in between episodes, which is going to be a whole 7 days for our listeners. But
right. We also just need to record our chats in between episodes.
Maybe. It's one of those things that you do an add-on.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Right.
But we continued our conversation from the last episode into lunch about free will and determinism and really didn't get anywhere. I think we both determined our conversation it's kind of a brick wall. We're just both running into a brick wall of each other's worldview, but we're enjoying it. We're enjoying running into the brick wall. But
and I guess maybe one of us can put cracks in the other's wall. Not that I'm trying to deconvert you, but
no, I don't think this is a way. If I was going to be deconverted, this isn't the way to go about it. Because
you can be a Christian and not believe in free will, and you can be a atheist and believe in free will. So it's a very different discussion than.
Yeah, I just think a deterministic universe is unlivable. But we were talking about that, and we went back into Kierkegaard, and I was observing. We were both observing the irony there that you're not a Christian, I am a Christian, but we both kind of agree with Kierkegaard and his critique of rationalism in that you can't really actually ground any ethics, let alone Christian ethics, in rationalism. And then I made the observation that then you said so it's just all revelation, and I was like, actually I don't think even Kierkegaard would say that. I think Luther would say that, in that Luther would observe, ironically enough, would disagree, even though he even though he comes before Kant, he would be like, we can't ground ethics in reason simply because we're depraved. So he'd have like a religious reason why.
Yeah.
And Kierkegaard would say you can't even really have a religious reason why, because even that is sort of grounded in something.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you either just have faith or you don't, which I think is something you would believe, and you would say, well, it just makes more sense not to have faith.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've described my deconversion is like the opposite of Paul and Saul at that point on the road to Damascus, where I was like, and I don't believe.
Yeah, you either have faith.
I didn't like ration my way into faith, and I didn't ration logic my way out.
Yeah, and so then we were talking about like why read philosophy, and I basically said what it came down to is I read philosophy because it actually does something for my soul. Now that's not everyone.
Right.
I don't read Kant because he nourishes me or makes my day better. Like I don't think either of us is interested in reading a guy trying to ground morality in reason, or just it's not that different than reading a book on logic or reading a math book. It's dry, and maybe some people are into it, but even the people that are left-brained wouldn't go to Kant because he's like talking about stuff that's completely irrelevant. So there's really mostly an aesthetic reason that's deeply personal and subjective for why I and others like me, more right-brain people, I think, like to read philosophy. It's not because I think that if I just understood Kant, what he was saying, or I just understood Hegel, or just understood Hume, then I would know what the truth is. But it's just because in the reading of the guys that I particularly like, Camus, Kierkegaard, Sartre, it makes me think in a way that just helps me feel better about where I'm at in the world. And I brought up Schopenhauer, and that's how we got on aesthetics, because Schopenhauer is different in that he's the ultimate pessimist. He will flat out admit there's no meaning to life and this is depressing, but that's the truest thing you could possibly say. The truest thing you could possibly say is also the most depressing thing that you could possibly say. And yet, what do we do with ourselves? Which is my question in the last episode.
Yeah.
Like you could come to the end of all of your whether it's empirical or rational, you still have a choice to make. What do you do with your time? What do you do with yourself during the few decades that you have to be conscious of your living being? And Schopenhauer basically said art. And that's how we got on aesthetics. He basically said art is where you're going to find your soul lifted up. I've found that to be true for me. More so than like, I don't want to say shallow pleasures, but you know what I mean. More so than like turning your mind off for 2 hours and watching a football game or something, or like a fun comedy that doesn't mean anything. I found those to be hollow, as opposed to having a podcast with my friend Nathan talking about what the hell is going on in the world, or reading a book by Kierkegaard, or watching an artsy film, or going to an art museum, or reading a poem. That kind of stuff actually rings true with me in terms of what Schopenhauer is saying, where, like, just maybe life isn't meaningless. Yeah. If you read it, a really good author can make you think that for a couple days.
A really good author can also convince you of the opposite if you read A Fault in Our Stars.
Exactly. But even then, even if you're reading like something that's ultimately nihilistic, the fact that you're just having this experience with somebody who's contemplating the meaning of things is for me a meaningful experience.
Yeah.
Even if it's just Sisyphus pushing a rock up a mountain.
Right. So I think one of the other things we were talking about was, and I'll get to the aesthetics, just riffing on what you were saying, where he's like, well, it's meaningless, so let's do art. Because what else can you do, essentially? Kind of like, it is meaningless. Guess it's time to go to work, because what else can you do? Like, I don't think you have to find some higher value in aestheticism or beauty. I think it's perfectly fine to find your value in life in football games or sex or
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I will say to your side, it's a bit bougie to be like art, right? Because it's not everyone can afford. Some people are just trying to eat.
Right.
So you have to have a certain status in life to be able to go to an art museum, to waste 3 hours on an art museum. You have to be like a modern 21st century person to even like entertain the idea. Like, I'm just going to sit down and watch Netflix and, to even have that choice.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, art was just for the elite until the robber barons came around and felt this moral duty.
Yeah.
To, like, give back. Like, we're going to steal everything we can, and now we'll give something back to you. So, like...
Yeah.
Like, that's how we got most of our museums and the, like, modern library system. And, like... Right?
There's something to distract you from the fact that you're a wage slave.
Well, it was mostly in their death. They were kind of like, I accumulated all this wealth so that I could make society better.
Right.
Because I was... I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but when you read it, it sort of comes down to, like, I accumulated all this wealth because I can do it better than you. I can make society better than you. Because I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And now, in order to find more of me's, I'm going to make an art museum because maybe there's a 5-year-old who's going to go and see a Rembrandt, and that's going to inspire him to be a billionaire and make the world better as well. In contraposition to billionaires today, who don't really... I mean, there are some, like the Gates Foundation. Please don't send me your conspiracy theories about Bill Gates, whatever. But there isn't quite the same chivalrousness in...
I hear you.
The 1%.
It's not genuine philanthropy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I guess one of the things we were talking about with the aesthetics, though, is it's bougie in a way because, I think when Schopenhauer's talking about it, or at least when you were relating it, it's much more like sit and contemplate the beauty of this instead of like just being like, wow, I really like that Target paint, right? Because like he wouldn't be like, oh, the mass-produced,
right?
Like even if it's on canvas that you find in Target or at Marshalls, right? And hang on.
Right, he wouldn't be like hanging a bunch of Thomas Kincaid paintings up in his up in his house. Yeah, right.
Which goes back to our way old episode with John. Like, sort of like if the meaning of life is to look at these quote unquote great works of art at the expense of quote unquote poorer works of art and contemplate them. Like, the hell? like
yeah, well then it kind of affirms his pessimism, right? But if you can say the same thing about work, right? If so the point of life is like to work, retire, leave some for my kids. I don't think it's any less depressing than to have spent my life contemplating art or whatever.
See, I feel like it is it is more depressing to have a life just contemplating art when, like, you could be playing with your kids. You could.
You brought that up. You brought the different element. Ethics. Because I would, Because I would never be like, sorry, son, I can't watch low art like Bluey with you.
Bluey's pretty high art, man. Low art, I'm thinking like Peter Rabbit.
Agreed. Bluey's good. I enjoy Bluey, but you know what I'm saying. Like I got better things to do. I have to go to this art museum, or I have to go to this panel discussion on, T.S. Eliot poetry.
Oh God.
Like
cats, jellicle cats.
Like I'd rather. You're right. I would personally never do that. I'd be like, no, this time that I have with you is much more valuable.
Yeah.
So it helps to know that Schopenhauer was a bachelor.
I was going to say the only way you can think that is you're an upper middle class to upper class bachelor.
Yeah, and it's a surprise that Schopenhauer is a bachelor too, with that worldview, right? He's like, the only thing that matters, sex doesn't matter, relationships doesn't. Everything is meaningless.
Right.
Is that your pickup line, bro? Because good luck with reproduction.
Yeah.
Dude pushed his grandma down the stairs, by the way. I don't know if it was his grandma. It might have been like his elderly neighbor.
Like,
so at least
to kill them?
No, he was just mad. He was just mad that he couldn't get his door open or something in his apartment. I don't remember the exact story, but and it might be a legend, but the thing is like it completely
it's not sometimes out of character.
Sometimes people are the opposite of their philosophy. So you at least have to appreciate that a man with as dismal of a philosophy as Schopenhauer was the same guy when he wasn't writing. He was when he was writing, he was making us feel like throwing ourselves down the stairs. And then in real life, he was throwing us down the stairs. So at least he's consistent.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. You keep surprising me, Nate. The last few episodes. In that, I didn't expect you as somebody who does appreciate art, and is a way better artist than me. To be like, there's really a place for low art in our society, which I don't disagree. There's definitely a place for low art in our society. I'm not a snob, contrary to okay, I'm a snob, but like I don't.
Everyone's a snob in some area.
Yeah, I don't try to be. I don't purposely.
Yeah, but I think everyone really is a snob in some areas.
Yeah,
like I got my big truck, right? And it's better than your big truck, or I.
Do you have a big truck?
No, I have a minivan with a rabbit head size hole in the bumper.
Yeah.
Which, fun story, in Massachusetts, if you have a hole in the bumper, you can't pass inspection now. It's like a new law that started last year.
Oh, I think that's been true in Vermont for a while.
Really? And I'm like, I hit a rabbit's head. Now I got to spend $3,000 to replace my bumper.
There is no inspection in Ohio. My dad just replaced his bumper with a 2x4. And nobody's gonna care. Which isn't a bumper.
Right.
Like wood isn't.
Yeah.
That's not a bumper. You could have just taken your bumper off. And that's it.
Right.
I guess he's protecting his exhaust.
Slightly.
Maybe. But,
So low art, high art.
Yeah.
I think, when I think of that, there are, my art at this point in my life is food. And I do look at it as an art form in some ways. I love making beautiful plates. I love that I got plating tweezers for my birthday, which are like a real thing, so that you can lay the microgreen down just right so that it looks like it fell from heaven, but you put a lot of work into getting it there. But I think there are Michelin star chefs who are into food for the art. So I'm thinking of like Noma, which is closing actually, because he said there's nowhere left to go. Like, and partially it's also because they needed like 30 to 60 unpaid stage interns to get this food out and still make a profit. Mm-hmm. I think the laws are changing in the Netherlands with like, you can't do that anymore. Like these guys are working for free for 3 months.
Yeah.
It's not a stage. A stage is like 1 hour, 4 days, 4 hours in 1 day to just see if you fit. And like you hear him talk and it's kind of about the food, but he's like, I want to see if people will eat live ants and moss. Right? And you're like, dude, that's just like avant-garde art.
Yeah.
And then there's guys like Gordon Ramsay and Tom Colicchio who are like, dude, a burger after your shift is amazing. Right?
Yeah.
Like David Chang, who wrote Momofuku, who I hear isn't a great person to work for, but like when he's talking with people and he's like giving interviews, he's like, we would leave Momofuku and he's like, and there's this like gross sub place like 3 doors down. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and man, like they can sling.
Yeah.
like best Italian sub. And he's like, I'm sure that bologna is like full of nitrites and
Yeah.
the junk, but man, is it good.
Yeah.
Right? So when I think of my food as an art, like I want to make it pretty, but I want to make it pretty because it's part of the experience of flavor.
Uh-huh.
And like, right, so you eat first with your eyes, and then with your nose, and then with your mouth.
Uh-huh.
And the mouth is not just taste, but texture, right? So you're using all of your senses. And even hearing sometimes, like, you know, you go to Chili's, and they bring out the fajitas, and it's like still sizzling, and they're like, don't, right? Like you're hearing things, you're seeing things.
Yep.
But the end of, like, my goal at the end of it is to make people smile.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I use it in fine dining, one of the best things I could do is watch people from the past, right? Like, bite into something and be like, oh my gosh, that's magical.
Yeah.
Right?
I actually think this is what Schopenhauer was alluding to.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't just like the contemplation and enjoyment of...
Right, but then it would be about the artist, not the art.
Maybe. I mean, I don't need to let Schopenhauer off the hook. If he's like a bougie snob, that's fine. My point is like that's what I got from it. What you're saying, like the whole thing, all of that to me is aesthetics.
Yeah.
The sound of the sizzling, you know, the atmosphere of the place where it's being served, the way the food looks on the table, the enjoyment, and your passion for providing for that people cannot be grounded in rationality. But man, is it good? You know what I mean? Like, and it's good. It's good for you to think about. It's good for you to talk about. See your eyes light up. It's good for me to sit and listen because there's an energy when people are talking about something that they're passionate about. You know, even if it's not like your passion, it's still like, oh, maybe this could be my passion, like because the other person's so.
Yeah.
And I think maybe this isn't what Schopenhauer's saying, but this is how I'll appropriate him. I'll just say that's like the stuff of life. That's what makes it. That's what you're hoping to get third world countries to. It's like you sort of feel bad for people that are on. We constantly talk about hierarchy of needs. Like you feel bad for those people because you want them to have enough to just be able to be like enjoy a passion of theirs.
Yeah.
And not have to constantly worry about just surviving. Because life, so you want life, even if it isn't more than food, you want it to be more than food.
Yeah.
Like you want it to be, and you can't ever, like if your passion is chess or whatever, like you can't tell yourself while you're playing chess, oh, this is meaningless, and expect to be happy. You have to lie to yourself in a way.
Or you just don't think about it.
Or you just don't think about it. Exactly.
Although...
Or you go full into the thing as if it is actually, in that moment, everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's a beautiful thing that human beings do. I think it's wonderful.
I have so many tangents to go on from this. One of the things I just want to hit is like, you know, those people in third world countries where like we want them to get to be to the place where they're self-actualized and like what they do. The irony is that that's sort of a byproduct of modernity. Yeah. Where you go to tribes that have sort of shrugged off modern capitalist ideals, right? So some of these tribes in the rainforests of Brazil, because the Amazon is just so giant. Some of these places in, you know, the deeper deserts of Congo, like not where like the Civil War was happening and everyone was being massacred in China soldiers, but like people who are so far in that like they didn't even know that the country's called Congo. They're just like, this is our ancestral. Right. They're actually really happy. And and they're subsistence living. But they're also like, so it is an irony that these people who are hunting and gathering for most of their lives report higher levels of happiness. Right? Because partially like they're doing it together and they're doing it with their small tribe. And like, I don't know if they're thinking about meaning in the same way that the Western capitalist is. They're just like, I don't know, this is just what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. I guess I'm not even thinking about the tribe, the tribal folks. And I'm thinking, and it is a paradox. I'm thinking about the countries that have been decimated by Western capitalism.
Right. You're thinking about Yemen and Syria and
Ethiopia, Somalia.
Yeah.
Like
Eritrea.
The kind of places where you have urbanization.
Yeah.
But more than half the population's like destitute poverty. Yeah. Right. Where like colonialism just didn't work. In fact, it did less than work.
Well, it did
destroyed.
work. It did work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I hear you.
They were like, we want to make our coffers rich.
Right.
So we're going to steal all your stuff.
And it makes you wonder.
It's like the British Museum is just like, here's all the stuff we stole.
I know. It's such a cluster F. It's like, what is decadence? I guess is the question. Because like as I say on one side of my mouth that like pursuing some kind of passion that's ultimately meaningless is the stuff of life, and you want that to be available. But is that to what degree is that available to you to the detriment of somebody else's survival? I'm not smart enough to answer that question. I think there's sociologists and books I could probably pick up to educate myself in those matters. But I do think the question is relevant. It's like, and we're going lots of tangents in this episode.
Yeah.
But that's like the debate between socialism and capitalism, essentially, depending on how, there are degrees of capitalism, socialism, right? But like if you break it into that binary, it's like, one side's like, hey, our resources are limited, and the other side is like, oh, it's just about creating wealth. Like, you can create more wealth, and the other side's like, no, you're not actually creating wealth, you're just creating inequity. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. You know, I'm self-correcting myself because I'm saying, okay, I can say, dude, I want everybody to be able to like find a passion, chess, cooking, reading, philosophy, watching sports, whatever. But how much of that is just based on if there was no inequity, the people that are like experiencing a lot of pleasure might have to experience less for the sake of these people experiencing more. But I'm not smart enough to know if that's actually how it works.
I mean, Adam Smith touches on that in his first book, Not Wealth of Nations.
Yeah.
The podcast I was listening today was No Stupid Questions, which is a Freakonomics radio podcast, and they were actually discussing this very thing. Yeah. And like, is it better to cut off your finger and endure pain to save 10,000 people in China that you'll never meet, right? Like you're going to have some pain and to make sure that other people have less, right? And it's sort of what utilitarianism as a philosophy does. They're like, okay, like, yeah, you can't be Jeff Bezos, but now everyone has a little bit more, right?
No, like no one can be Jeff Bezos,
right? And then you have the Carnegie Mellons who are like, no, I'm going to conquer the world, but then that's because I can do it better, and I'm going to actually raise you up through my capital,
right?
And I mean, even Marx would say wealth is created.
Right.
He would just say that the bourgeois class is
correct,
right? Because you take wood, you turn it into a chair, you've created value that wasn't there before. It's just that now the bourgeois say, well, we'll pay you 5 cents for that chair, and then they sell it for $50.
Right. Yeah, and I wish that...
and now we're on to economics.
And I wish that was like a thing I knew about. I know that we have listeners that are like, Matt, that's the most important thing there is. You know? It's like the foundation of all things. I probably don't disagree. But like, man, economics is not aesthetically pleasing as a topic for me.
Yeah, see, I find it pretty not microeconomics is like, I think everyone has a pretty good grasp of like, if you're in a town and there's not a lot of gas, like, and lots of people want gas, the price is going to go up.
Right.
Gasoline's a bad example because it's like regulated, but
yeah.
Right. There's a reason Van Goghs go for billions of dollars, besides them being a status symbol. But sort of the macro, like Freakonomics, like these big questions, like I think it does drive a lot of human behavior. Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting to talk about, but I never have had a conversation about economics where I felt like really informed and able to like make a case for Marx's view or Smith's view or some some more like capitalist point of view. Like I'm like,
Smith was more of a socialist than people give him credit for.
Oh, yeah.
He's very cherry picked.
Yeah. I think that's true. But even though I just admitted, like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's capital S socialist, but he's like looking around. He's like, there's a lot of poor people that shouldn't be poor, though.
Yeah, right. So to bring this back, try to bring this back to aesthetics and what we were talking about is I was just like sort of self-critiquing myself, saying it's easy as a first world person in 21st century America to be like, yeah, just find your passion, and even though it doesn't really ultimately mean anything, like it gives you meaning for that second, but like but I wanted to even go further back into what you were saying about like guys just enjoying a cheeseburger after work, because that's an interesting metaphor, because I think like it's different with art like music or film, but maybe it doesn't have to be. If food tastes good, it tastes good. If I can't imagine someone so snobby as to be like, I can imagine someone so snobby as to be like, I will never eat a cheeseburger.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine anyone so just like willfully ignorant as to be like, that doesn't taste good. But, you know,
vegans.
But with music and film, people have this thing all the time where somebody will like something that's low art. They'll like some band or some song or some film, and they'll go, well, I just like it because I like it. And you can never quite tell, like, well, do you like it ironically? I don't think you can like a cheeseburger ironically. You know what I mean? Like, if it tastes bad to you, it tastes bad.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting conversation. And people have different takes on that. I want to be the kind of person that if I enjoy something, I can admit that I enjoy it. Like, I like Survivor, and I like that show, and I'm not saying that it's high art. I just like it.
Right. Yeah. But I listen to pop music. I mean, I also have, like, you know, but the go-to now when I'm driving and not listening to a podcast, I'm like, top hits.
Yeah.
That's my Spotify playlist. Yeah. And Spotify has, like, all these things tailored to me. And I'm like, I don't know, pop hits.
Yeah.
Like, give me some Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande.
The more modern my music is, like, the more recent it is, the more recently it was recorded, the more obscure it is.
Yeah, I've gone the opposite way, I think.
The farther I go... So, like, I love the Beatles. Mm-hmm. That's possibly, even now, as pop as you can possibly get. They might still be the biggest band in the world.
Yeah.
But if I were to watch the Grammys, I think I'd probably know, like, half the people, and then, like, have listened to a quarter of the songs or albums that they're talking about.
Yeah, and we sing along to, like, every single, except when a new one comes out.
Yeah, and but I never want to be that. I never want to be that guy that's just like wouldn't even listen to The Weeknd, which I know because he was in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Just because they're The Weeknd, you know. So, yeah, and I'm less snobby with film too. Maybe that's because I have kids. I'm even less snobby with TV as I admit it. It's like there's a sense in which TV is supposed to be low art, even though
unless it's HBO original.
Yeah, well, even though it's streaming now, it's become. In some ways, the movies and TV have like reversed. It used to be like TV was lower than movies, but now like movies is like the MCU and the comic books, and if you want to find like the real artsy stuff, then you gotta stream everything.
Right.
you gotta have a subscription to Netflix, HBO,
AMC.
Amazon Prime, Apple TV. You have to have all the subscriptions, otherwise you're gonna miss out on like the coolest stuff.
Well, even now, like all the like AMC has like Plus has stuff that's just exclusive, like Interview with a Vampire, the series, which apparently was like you laugh, but like first of all, Interview with a Vampire is a fantastic vampire movie.
I haven't seen it.
It's amazing. It's not like low art vampire movie. It's actually pretty high art vampire movie.
Yeah.
The Interview with a Vampire TV show started off as the same time as the Game of Thrones prequel, and one of the other big and all the critics were like, no, Interview with a Vampire didn't just rehearse old themes. Like they actually explored what the world is. Where I watched the Game of Thrones. Like when the Targaryen, I forget the name of it. I even forget the name of it. That's how unimpressed I was. And it was fine, but I was like, yeah, you're a Targaryen. Oh, there are dragons. Oh, someone else get killed. Oh, that's boobs. Like it was just Game of Thrones, but set 200 years in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
yeah,
so the high art became low art.
I never watched Game of Thrones, but I heard it was. Like season 1 was good, and then it kind of was. That was it.
Yeah, to offend even more people, I feel like that was like the books. Like I loved the first book, and I was a little bit behind the game. Like I think the fourth book had come, and then I tried to read the second. I got halfway through, and
so you're basically like, I'm not surprised that the other season sucked.
I mean, I liked the other. I watched the whole thing. The last season was terrible, but
yeah. Were you gonna say something about
probably
high art or low art? You had another thing.
I guess just to go way back to you saying that what Schopenhauer was talking about is the art that I was describing.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in the break too, where Camus kind of looks into the void and he says I guess we should Sisyphus should just keep pushing the thing up the mountain
and find a way to look at it as a good thing.
Yeah, I guess my philosophy, I guess where I would land with all these people is life's meaningless. Look into the void and then turn around and stop looking and go eat some food.
Yeah.
Go hang out with your at the end of the day. And I guess maybe only I think a strong theist can't say this. So I don't think Hasidic Jews or Shiites or Sunnis or Buddhists or Christians can say this. I don't think y'all can say there is no meaning.
Yeah.
And that's not
Buddhists can say it, I think.
Sort of, but they have to get past. They still need to progress to the point where they can hit nirvana.
Yeah.
Where me and as an atheist, I don't care.
Yeah.
I guess not that I guess you theists, strong theists, right? Can't say I don't care if there's a meaning or not.
Right.
I can say I don't care if there's a meaning or not.
Right.
Right. The Christian, there has to be a meaning. There has to be a meaning in Islam. It's to follow the 5 pillars and praise Allah. Right. That is the purpose of life. And I'm I don't know. Let's go sled. It seems like fun. What higher purpose is there? I'm does it matter? Right. Where I would say higher purpose.
It depends on how invested you are in it.
Yeah, which I guess goes back to the ethics thing from last week, where I'm it's just mental masturbation. You're just trying to make things matter instead of just throwing up your hands and say, it doesn't matter, but I like cheeseburgers. I like Britney Spears, so I'm just going to do those things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I was saying about philosophy. I like the philosophy.
You do it because you like it.
I do it because I like it. But in terms of Christianity, there is a tension there that's just prevalent throughout this entire podcast as it concerns me.
Yeah.
Just we have these philosophies. I don't know. Well, I think here's the irony. If you're actually going to be truly relativist, and I don't want to say I'm a relativist, but for argument's sake, you'd have to say you're a relativist about there being. You're as much a relativist about there being no meaning as you have to be about there being meaning.
What do you mean?
In other words, to truly be a relativist, you still have to hold out hope that there is meaning. Your attitude towards no meaning has to be, I could be wrong. Otherwise, if you're saying there's absolutely no meaning, you're making an absolute contradiction, right? It's absolutely no meaning. Are you sure? Like,
Why is that a contradiction, though?
because of the word absolute, I think.
I mean,
because there's a difference between saying I think there's three things in regards to meaning. There's the person who says there's meaning and this is it. There's the person that says there may be meaning. Oh wait, there's actually four. I just thought of another one. There's actually four. There's the person who says there's meaning, but I don't know it yet, and I don't know if I can ever know it. There's the person that says there's there may be meaning, and it's a meaningful life to try and discover it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the person that says there's no meaning, and it doesn't matter, and I'm just doing things. So, like, I think the person who says there's absolutely no meaning is not that much different than the person who's saying there absolutely is meaning and this is it, because for the person who's saying there's no meaning, absolutely, they're saying no meaning is the meaning. That's what I'm saying the contradiction is.
I'm going to completely disagree, because it very much sounds like when an evangelical says, atheism is a religion. Not having a religion is a religion. I'm like, no, not having a religion is not a religion. Saying there's no capital meaning. I'm not giving meaning to anything. Right? I'm just saying there is no ultimate purpose to your existence.
Yeah, I guess it's a category difference. The reason I don't like that, I actually think the argument that the evangelicals make, and they're not the only ones. Catholics apologists make the same argument.
Yeah, I'm sure Muslims do too.
Thomistic, it's a classic argument, and it's another kind of brick wall thing where I've seen it happen so many times, and nobody ever gets past it. And I'm not attempting to get past it here. I will say that I think the argument itself is valid, but I think coming from theists, it's often disingenuous. Because if you're arguing against absolutism as an absolutist, the burden of proof is on you. And
No. The burden of proof is not on me to prove that God exists.
I'm saying the burden of proof is on the Catholic who's making a claim about the existence of God, let's say, and that's the conversation. And they're trying to show that your belief is as absolutist as theirs. Well, just because you both have absolutist beliefs doesn't mean that you're right, or that your belief, your doctrine can be demonstrated to be true. Mm-hmm. The burden of proof is still on you to demonstrate the existence of God.
Right.
So, it's not a drop the microphone, because the burden of proof is still on you.
Right. I mean, I would even go further.
But they treat it like a drop the mic. It's like I see the argument itself as valid in terms of, I think people that are absolute nihilists should think about the fact that absolute nihilism is a paradox. I don't see it as anything but it's a contradiction. But it's not a lock and shut case the way you'll just see so many. What bothers me is you see so many Christians just be like, drop the mic, I got him on the absolutist thing, and you're like, no, nihilism is nihilism. They don't care, and because they're nihilists. I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think the argument is just 100% false. I'm probably as close to an absolutist as you can get without saying there's 100% no probability that a God exists, right? As an atheist. But I'm also as close as you can get to a unicornist, right? And the burden of proof isn't just because I'm absolutely sure that currently, right now, leprechauns are not a thing, right? Doesn't mean it's the other side of the coin of people who are like, no, leprechauns are real. I'm like, find me a leprechaun and I'll change my mind.
I got you.
Right? Yeah. And I think that's where I'm coming from with the meaning, where I'm like, there's no meaning, lowercase m. And I don't think that that's the meaning of life. I don't think the meaning is that there's no meaning. I'm just like, there's no meaning. Meaning is a human construct.
Yeah.
Like, we're just animals, man. We're just apes. Like, figured out language and tools.
I guess where I would fall is anybody who says that there is a meaning has automatically placed the burden of proof on themselves to demonstrate what that meaning is.
Yeah.
And that if you're honest, you've truly thought about these things, you're not being dogmatic because of any philosophy or ideology or religion, and you're just really being honest with the stark matter, I think you'll have to determine, as far as I can tell, there's no meaning. However, I'm holding out hope. and I think that's when you I don't know, I guess that's it. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, and
it's similar. It's similar to a guy I've mentioned a couple times who's a bit obscure, by the name of Miguel de Unamuno. And we could put that in the description of the episode.
Yeah, and I guess I would line up with more Feynman, where he's like, yeah, let's go to the abyss, let's turn our back and go play bongos and lead Carnival. Like, why? Because it was really fun leading Carnival.
Yeah. Yesterday I said to somebody, the abyss is not for everyone, and he was like, we're putting that on a t-shirt. The abyss is not for everyone. And, no, but those for whom it is for, if that's even a thing, it's not as bad to them as it is to the people who are avoiding it.
Yeah.
And in fact, there probably should be people who don't avoid it but should, like Nietzsche.
And I think there's the opposite. I think there's people who avoid it but shouldn't, and I think that's probably most of, in my experience, the American evangelical world.
Yeah.
Right? Where, like, in seminary, they're like, don't read the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yep.
Why? Because you might lose your faith. Well, maybe they're making better arguments than you.
Right.
If your whole premise is stay away from this philosophy or these people because it's going to convince you that your current philosophy is wrong.
Right.
Then maybe your current philosophy is wrong. And it doesn't necessarily mean that Christianity is wrong, but if they can might be the foundation that you're arguing.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well, and then for me, there's that, and then there's also a disingenuousness to claiming that you know the truth, but you haven't even stared at the abyss.
Yeah. Well, and the truth should stand up regardless of what other things are coming at it.
Yeah. And I even kind of I even see theology that way. I see the story of Jesus as that way. Jesus faced the abyss. That's the kind of the thing with Gethsemane.
Yeah.
And on the cross, when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And heaven doesn't even respond.
Yeah.
Well, some people don't want to go there. And they shouldn't, because it's dangerously close to masochism. Especially if you're like Jesus is like, I'm doing the will of my Father, which is what? Allowing myself to be crucified, even though like in that from within that narrative, I lay my life down willingly. You lay your life down willingly. That's masochism. Or dangerously close to it. But like, I think that, and you have that in a history of Christian asceticism, and Paul even warns against that in Colossians. It's like, no, Jesus was crucified, so in some sense you didn't have to be. But also, I think that there are people, and I guess the people I'm talking about are people who could watch. I'm talking about goths, essentially. People who could look at sadness and they're like, that doesn't depress me.
Yeah, let me revel in it.
Sort of revel in it, and I think what people who don't have that melancholy or gothic makeup about them don't understand is like that soothes the despair to sort of take some time to stare at the abyss. It doesn't make you more depressed. And if it makes you more depressed, then don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, then go play tennis, watch Survivor, whatever. But if in some weird way, because maybe you're just jacked up or something, I don't know, some weird way, it's soothing, then it's soothing. And it's therapeutic, and that, it's probably a good thing. I don't know.
Maybe it's high art.
I don't know. I think people are different, and they're determined to be wired different. So some people can binge Breaking Bad, and other people are like, why would you do that? Watch Ted Lasso. The world's depressing enough. And both are valid.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts?
No. As it was determined to be.
Go have a cheeseburger, man.
No. I had a cereal.
No, I'm telling our listeners.
Oh, yeah, you guys
go
have cheeseburger.
Go have a cheese. And if you're lactose intolerant, get a Wagyu steak or something. Just sit there and smile. Have a great week.